Hello everyone and welcome back to another explosive episode of Nuclear Revenge. So today I've got 3 jaw-dropping tales you won't want to miss. If you enjoy stories like these, like and subscribe to help this channel grow. This first story's titled, She Burned Down My Family's House. Some people inherit money, others get stocks, bonds, trust funds. Me, I got a house. Not just any house, a 2-story colonial wrapped in ivy and memory. My parents built it brick by brick, starting with a patch of empty dirt and a dream. My father laid the foundation in winter while my mother hauled stone up the hill one wheelbarrow at a time. Every door creaked in a familiar rhythm. Every window frame held the ghost of a conversation I could still hear if the wind hit just right. They died 5 years ago. Head-on collision. I got a call at 2:13 a.m. saying my father died on impact and my mother didn't even make it to the hospital. 2 people loved by everyone, gone in a blink. That house became a tomb, and I couldn't leave it. I didn't need money. I had work, carpentry, small restoration jobs, enough to keep me fed and the lights on. What I needed was to keep them alive somehow, and that house was the only way I knew how. Then Olivia came along. She was the type of woman you noticed in a crowd. Smart eyes, practiced grace, a voice that wrapped around you like silk. I met her at a local antique fair. She was standing in front of a 1940s oak bureau, inspecting the grain like she knew what she was looking for. I made a joke about overpriced nostalgia. She laughed. 5 minutes later, we were getting coffee. 2 weeks after that, dinner. A month later, she was in my bed, her perfume already embedded in my sheets. She said she loved the house the moment she saw it, called it vintage with a breathless reverence that made me feel like I'd invited someone worthy into something sacred. And maybe part of me wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe she saw the place the way I did, not as a property, but as a body with a soul. But she never saw the soul. She saw the bones, the deed, the appraisal. She moved in with ease. A pair of throw pillows here, new curtains there, just a little freshening up, she said with a smile. Don't worry, I'll keep the spirit of it. But the spirit began to die. My mother's dishes were replaced by color-coded dinnerware from a lifestyle catalog. My father's books, some nearly a century old, were boxed and put in the attic for space. The couch they saved 3 months to buy was deemed too drab and disappeared overnight. I didn't fight her. Not yet. Because when you grow up in a house that breeds grief, you learn to keep peace above all else. But then she said it. We were having coffee. She put her hand over mine and said, I've been thinking about us, about getting married. I blinked, not because I was surprised, we talked around it, but because I knew what was coming next. I don't think we should do a prenup, she said. It just puts up a wall before we've even begun. And there it was. I looked at her, really looked, at the woman who'd subtly gutted the house one corner at a time, who smiled when she lied, and never left fingerprints on anything she wanted to make disappear. I love you, I said slowly, but I will never sign the house away. It stays with me, no matter what. Her smile twitched. Just slightly. That was her tell. A flicker of something behind the eyes, gone too fast for most people to catch. She nodded. Of course, I understand. But I saw the war ignite in her mind. After that, she changed. Not outwardly, not in any way you could point to and say this is it. But the air shifted. She began dropping comments. You seemed off last night. Did you sleepwalk again? You've been so forgetful lately. Do you think you should talk to someone? At first, I thought it was concern. Then I started finding things. My journal, gone from the drawer. Later returned, but pages missing. Old prescription bottles in my name for medication I never took. A neighbor told me she asked about fire insurance for the house, said it was just in case, while I was at work. And she watched me, all the time. Not like a partner, like a hunter. I didn't say anything, didn't confront her, not yet. But inside me, something began to boil. The quiet kind of rage. The kind that doesn't show on your face, but curls your fingers when you sleep and makes your teeth grind until your gums bleed. Then came the night. I told her I was visiting a friend out of town. Left at dusk. Drove 20 miles. Then doubled back on foot through the woods behind the house. I watched from the tree line as the lights went out room by room. At midnight, she moved like a shadow. Came down to the study. Gloves. Can of gasoline. Slow, deliberate pours along the baseboards. I watched her pull something from a folder, my journal. She scribbled in it. A matchbook was in her coat pocket, and I realized what she wanted. She wasn't just going to destroy the house. She was going to destroy me. Make it look like I cracked, that I'd lost my mind, that I'd burned the house down in a fit of inherited madness. She framed me. Say I couldn't handle losing my parents. Say I was mentally unstable, and the house had become an obsession. And people would believe her, because she had built the story piece by piece. I felt something break inside me. Not panic, not fear, hatred. A deep, nauseating hatred for the woman I'd let crawl into my bed, whisper into my ear, tear apart everything sacred with manicured hands and a voice dipped in honey. I wanted to walk into that house and scream. I wanted to grab her and ask how long she'd been planning it. But I did nothing, because I knew if I moved too early, she'd win. I let her light the match, and I watched my family's home go up in flames while the woman who destroyed it curled up in my bed and slept like a child. She thought the fire would be the end, but I'd already taken everything that mattered. The journals, the photos, the letters, the hidden camera in the study. She thought she'd buried me in the ashes, but all she did was set the stage, and I was ready to burn her world to the ground. The house was still smoldering when I walked back into town, reeking of smoke and silence. I didn't go to the fire station, didn't call anyone, I let the flames do their work. By dawn, what once held the weight of generations had been reduced to a blackened shell. I found her in the kitchen when I returned, wearing my shirt like she owned it, hair tousled, mug in hand. She looked up from the coffee she didn't make and said, "Are you okay?" She was already setting the narrative. "I had the worst dream," she said. "I thought I smelled something burning." She was smiling. I don't remember what I said in response. Doesn't matter. The words I wanted to say, "I know what you did, you soulless bitch," burned a hole in the back of my throat. But I held it in, because this wasn't just about making her pay. It was about watching her unravel, letting her believe she'd won was the beginning. She started planning the rest of her trap that day, told her friend over brunch that I'd been stressed lately, said I'd been forgetting things, claimed I was devastated about the fire, but weirdly calm. She talked just loudly enough at the grocery store about what the insurance guy said, left my journal lying open on the counter, the new pages she forged smeared with frantic, unstable handwriting. It was all so carefully crafted. She was good, but not good enough, because I had a copy of the footage. I watched it every night in the garage of a friend who owed me a favor, paused on her silhouette, rewound the moment she struck the match, studied her face in frame by frame slow motion, not for evidence, for fuel. I needed to see the truth, to feel it, to let that hatred ferment and distill into something colder, something cleaner. She made one mistake, though, one she'd never even realized until it was far too late. She thought she was the only one playing a game. What she didn't know was that I'd begun documenting everything the moment she started asking about the house. I had audio of her questions, digital backups of my journal, and a psychologist on record saying I was sound of mind just 6 weeks before the fire, someone I'd seen quietly, preemptively, when I started suspecting something wasn't right. The pieces were already there. I didn't need to run to the police, and I didn't want her locked up. No! I wanted her free. Free to panic. Free to unravel. Free to watch the walls of her life crack in slow motion. I withdrew from her, just a little, pulled back emotionally, let her chase me. She'd reach for my hand and I'd forget to take it. She started asking if I still loved her, her voice slightly higher than usual. I said things like, "I'm just tired, and there's been a lot on my mind." I let her stew in it, let her imagination run wild. I wanted her to taste fear, not from me, but from the realization that maybe she hadn't buried me deep enough. Then I found her burner phone. She hid it in the back of the bathroom cabinet, behind the towels. It had calls to a man I didn't recognize. I listened to the voicemails. "He's still acting weird," she whispered. "But I think it worked. I think he's breaking." Worked. It worked. That was all I needed. I didn't say anything, just left a flash drive on her pillow that night. Footage of her in the study, the match, the gasoline, every detail, uncut and silent, like a home movie from hell. I slept in the garage that night, waiting. At 3:12 a.m., I heard the door slam, then the sound of vomiting. I walked back into the house to find her sitting on the edge of the bed, knees pulled to her chest, staring at the screensaver on her laptop as if it might blink first. "You knew," she said. "I watched you do it. You're not going to the police?" "No." She frowned, confused. "Then what do you want?" I stepped closer, slowly, like you approach a wounded animal. "I want you to sit in this house every day and wonder when it's going to happen. I want you to look over your shoulder every time the phone rings. I want you to see my face in your dreams." "That's sick," she said, voice trembling. I leaned down, my voice flat. "No, Olivia, what you did was sick. You burned the only thing that ever mattered to me. You tried to turn me into a ghost. Now I'm going to haunt you. Quietly. Forever." She tried to call my bluff. Tried to threaten me. Said she'd go to the cops herself. Accused me of manipulating her, of fabricating the footage. She didn't realize I'd already mailed the original to 3 separate people with instructions to release it if anything ever happened to me. I showed her the envelope. Her face drained of color. She left the next day. No suitcase. No goodbye. Just gone. I don't know where she went, and I don't care. She doesn't sleep through the night anymore. I know, because once a month I leave a single page from the journal she stole in the mailbox of whatever apartment she's in. No name, no return address, just one page, and a note at the bottom. I remember everything. She'll never rebuild her life. Not because I destroyed it, because I left just enough standing for her to realize what she lost, and that every waking second it could come crumbling down. This next story is titled "He Said I Was Just the Driver." The first thing you need to know is that I wasn't always a cab driver. I used to work in logistics, mid-level, stable, a decent pension on the horizon. But that was before the merger, before the layoffs, before I became just another name on a spreadsheet someone deleted. By then, my wife had left, and I had full custody of my son, Danny. I needed fast cash, something flexible. So I bought an old Crown Vic with over 300,000 miles on it and signed up for a taxi medallion through a friend. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept the lights on. The graveyard shift was mine in midnight to 6 a.m., because that's when I could work without worrying about after-school pickups or packed lunches. You see a lot of things at that hour. Drunks who mistake you for therapists. Late-night workers with eyes full of sleep and resignation. But nothing prepared me for him. He flagged me down outside a dimly lit bar on a Tuesday. Thin, twitchy, wearing a long coat despite the heat. Something about his posture made my instincts prickle, but I pulled over. "Money is money. East Bridge," he said, barely above a whisper, then got in the back. We rode in silence for a while. I adjusted the rear view and saw him staring at me, not just watching, staring, not at my face, but at the back of my head like he was memorizing it. "You always drive this route?" he asked suddenly. I shrugged. "People go where they go. I just follow the meter." He laughed. Low, throaty. "Meter's just a lie, you know. It tells you how far you've gone, not where you're headed." I didn't respond. I've heard enough barroom philosophy to know it goes nowhere. Then he said, "Do you believe in justice?" The hair on my arm stood up. "Sure," I muttered. "In theory." "Good," he said, "because you're gonna help me deliver some." I glanced in the mirror. His hand was inside his coat now. I couldn't see what he was holding, but I had a pretty good guess. "Turn left here," he ordered. "Warehouse district." "This isn't the route to the bridge," I said cautiously. He leaned forward, his breath warm and sour against my ear. "The bridge was a test. You passed. Now do as I say." I did. What choice did I have? We drove past sleeping buildings and graffiti-tagged walls until he pointed to a dark, derelict warehouse with no lights. "Pull in and park behind," he said. My hands shook as I turned the wheel. He got out and walked to the trunk. "Pop it," he said. I did. He pulled out something wrapped in a tarp, heavy and awkward. Then he looked at me. "You're going to help me carry this inside." "What is it?" I asked, barely able to speak. He grinned. "Justice." My brain screamed run, but my feet moved. We hauled the thing into the warehouse. It hit the floor with a sickening thud. The tarp slipped slightly, revealing a face. It was a man, bound, bruised, unconscious. "I told you," the passenger said. "We're delivering justice." I turned to him. "Who is he?" He lit a cigarette with shaking fingers. "The man who killed my sister. Drunk driver. Got off on a technicality. No time, no fine, just walked." I wanted to back away. Wanted to say this isn't my fight. But I saw something in the man's face, a pain that mirrored my own losses, my own hollow nights. I remembered the insurance lawyer who laughed when I couldn't pay for Danny's medication. I remembered how justice often had a price tag. "You brought me here," I said. "Why?" "Because," he said, "if I go down for this, I want someone to know why I did it. Someone who might understand." I stared at him, at the man on the floor, and at the city beyond the warehouse doors. "I'm not going to help you hurt him," I said. "Didn't ask you to," he replied, and then added with a strange calmness, "but you're staying until it's done." He pulled out a revolver and set it on the ground between us. That was when the real test began. The revolver sat between us like a dare. He didn't point it at me. He didn't have to. I glanced once at the bound man, still breathing, barely. Dried blood crusted at his temple. There was something too neat about how he was tied, tight, practiced. This wasn't a moment of madness. It was rehearsed, methodical. He was her math teacher, the man said, pacing. She was 15, straight A student, shy, quiet. He gave her rides home, told my parents he was helping her prepare for a competition. They trusted him. He paused, then stared at the unconscious man like he wanted to crush his skull just by looking. They found her in the woods behind the school. Rope burns on her wrists, broken nails from trying to fight. And still the DA said there wasn't enough evidence. No DNA, no witnesses. His lawyer argued the bruises were from consensual, rough play. He spat the words like poison. 15. I should have said stop. I should have told him the system still had a chance, that vengeance rots the soul. But I'd seen my own failures too closely. My son's doctor bills denied by insurance. A hit-and-run driver who walked because the judge's nephew worked at the same firm. I knew how justice slipped between fingers. But still, I couldn't let this happen. "You don't want to do this," I said quietly. "Even if he deserves it." "Deserves got nothing to do with it," he muttered. "It's about balance. About making sure the next little girl he grooms doesn't end up in a shallow grave." I moved slowly, deliberately. "Then take him to the press. The court of public opinion." He cut me off with a bitter laugh. "He's already suing them for defamation. He'll get a payout. He's untouchable." I took one step toward the gun. "Then don't make him a martyr. Don't give him a reason to be pitted." Silence. Then he picked up the revolver and walked to the man. He knelt down, not aiming, just watching. "She used to braid my hair when I was little," he said. "Said I looked like a warrior, but I wasn't. Not then." He stood up and handed the gun to me. "I can't do it." "What?" I said, startled. I thought I could. I thought hate would carry me through, but it's burning out. I need someone else, someone who knows what it's like to be powerless. I stared at the gun. My hands trembled. I'm not killing him, I said. He nodded. Fine, then choose. He walked over to a power box and flipped a switch. A low hum buzzed through the warehouse. Then he grabbed a timer from his coat, one of those mechanical kitchen ones. He twisted the dial to 30 minutes and set it on a crate. When the timer's up, he said, a feed goes live. Police will get an anonymous tip. This whole place is wired with surveillance. Every angle, every moment, they'll see what you did, or didn't. Then he walked out. Just like that, I was left with a man slowly waking up, tied to the floor, and 30 minutes to decide what kind of man I really was. I thought about Danny, what kind of father I wanted him to believe I was. So I made my choice. I cut the man free. He came to just as I finished. His eyes were wild, confused, scared. He didn't thank me, just scrambled to his feet and ran. Let him rot in the shadows of his own guilt. Let the whole world see him running from a truth he couldn't outrun. When the timer hit 0, I stood in the middle of the warehouse, hands raised, waiting for the flashing lights. They never came. Instead, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, one message. You passed. You don't need to become the monster to beat one. Thank you. I left the warehouse and never saw him again. But every night since, I keep driving. Same streets, same hours. Sometimes justice doesn't wear a badge. Sometimes, it rides in the back seat. This last story is titled The Neighbor from Hell. I never used to be the kind of man who thought revenge solved anything. I believed in letting things go, in the natural balance of karma. That was before Tom moved in next door. At first glance, Tom was every bit the suburban dream. A clean-cut man with a picture-perfect family, always quick with a wave and a disarming smile. We moved into the neighborhood the same month, and our kids, my son Josh and his daughter Emily, became fast friends. That was my first mistake, letting Tom get close to my family. It started small. A broken sprinkler head on my side of the yard, Tom's new dog digging under my fence, minor things. I chalked it up to new home hiccups and didn't press it. But over time, these little incidents became patterns. Tools went missing from my shed. My garbage cans were moved just enough to break the sensors on pickup day. And still, I said nothing. Then Emily started coming over more, but never with Tom's permission. Just wanted to get away for a bit, she'd whisper to Josh when she thought I wasn't listening. She looked jumpy, eyes scanning everything like they were full of ghosts. I asked Tom once if everything was okay at home. He smiled and said Emily was just going through a sensitive phase. I should have known better. I should have looked harder. Everything escalated in the spring. Josh, only 10, came home one day from Emily's house, pale as paper. He refused to speak for hours. That night, he told me Tom had shown him something that made him sick. It took every ounce of control not to go straight to his house and beat the man into the ground. I called the police, filed a report. Child Protective Services came by, but with Tom's clean record and reputation, it all got buried. I tried following up, but without concrete evidence, it was my word against his. Emily stayed quiet, too scared, I guessed. The system failed her, so I stopped relying on the system. I started watching, recording. I installed cameras on the corners of my property under the guise of security upgrades. I logged every odd visit, every strange package Tom received late at night, every time Emily slipped away and came to us for air. I didn't tell anyone, and not my wife, not Josh. I needed them to stay clean, above suspicion. The footage confirmed what I feared. Emily wasn't just neglected, she was being manipulated, gaslit, used as a pawn in Tom's sadistic games. I caught him screaming at her one night, face twisted in a rage I wouldn't have believed possible from someone who mowed his lawn in pressed khakis. Still, nothing actionable, until I caught him on video dragging a trash bag late into the woods behind the neighborhood, after midnight. Curious, I followed the next day. In the bag, hidden under fresh yard waste, were several empty liquor bottles, prescription pill containers in Emily's name, and a flash drive. The flash drive was the weapon. It contained videos, short clips, taken from hidden cameras in his own home. Footage that painted Tom not just as an abuser, but a predator. It was damning, explicit. There was enough to bury him 10 times over. But instead of going straight to the police, I played the long game. I created an anonymous online profile and began feeding the footage, bit by bit, to a journalist I trusted, a friend from college who now worked as an investigative reporter. I sent the files encrypted, with timestamps and context. I kept my name out of it. I also planted the idea in Tom's head that someone was watching him. A lock on his shed was broken, his porch light unscrewed, his dog vanished for 2 days and reappeared on my front lawn. The paranoia bloomed. I saw it in his eyes every morning when we waved across the yard, me smiling, him sweating. He started unraveling in public, accused the mailman of spying, screamed at the PTA meeting about conspiracies. The community began to whisper. A week later, the exposé broke. The footage, the documents, the testimony of Emily, who, finally safe under my roof, found her voice again. The authorities couldn't ignore it this time. Tom was arrested in front of his house, cuffed and shoved into the back of a police car while every neighbor stood outside watching. No one said a word, not even me. But I wasn't done yet. Tom's arrest was just the beginning. The court system was slow, and I didn't trust it to finish the job. Men like Tom, with no prior convictions and just enough charm, always seemed to find cracks to slip through. I needed to make sure there were no cracks left. First, I made a deal with Emily's mother, Denise, if you could even call her that. She'd skipped town right after the story broke, abandoning her daughter completely. I tracked her to a dingy motel 3 hours away. She'd barely opened the door when I knocked. "You here to drag me back?" she said, lighting a cigarette with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. "No," I said, "I'm here to buy your silence." That got her attention. I didn't want her resurfacing months later trying to reclaim custody for some court payout, or worse, making Emily relive it all in testimony. I handed her a contract drawn up by a lawyer friend, signing away any parental rights permanently. In exchange, I handed her $5,000 in cash, enough for her to disappear, but not enough to build anything new. She signed without a word. With that, Emily was safe. But I wasn't done with Tom. I began to tear down his image from the inside. I used the flash drive to trace his communications, burner emails, anonymous forums, the rotten community of people like him. Quietly, I posed as him. I sent cryptic messages, hinted at confessions, and left digital breadcrumbs leading right back to his IP. When the forensic teams dug deeper, because of course they would, what they found confirmed their worst suspicions. Tom didn't just act alone. He was part of something bigger, and he left a trail wide enough for prosecutors to stretch their case across multiple charges. He went from a possible plea deal to facing federal time. But revenge isn't just punishment, it's isolation. I made sure the parents at school knew exactly who had been complicit. The principal who'd brushed off my initial concerns, anonymously exposed with email transcripts and CC'd warnings I had sent months before. The neighbor who'd vouched for Tom's character during the first investigation, a copy of her statements ended up in her husband's mailbox, alongside bank records showing donations Tom had made to her failing business. And finally, I returned to the fence, that rotted piece of wood where this had all begun. I replaced it, not with some new vinyl paneling, but steel bars, a reminder to me every morning that monsters can live inches away. Emily healed slowly. It took months for her to sleep through the night, even longer to laugh. But Josh never left her side. He taught her how to ride a bike, showed her the stars through his telescope, even let her name his goldfish. He made her feel like a kid again. And me? I told my wife the full story a year later, when Tom was sentenced to 48 years without parole. She listened in silence, then simply nodded and said, "You did what you had to." We sold the house a month later, moved to a quieter place where fences meant privacy, not protection. Tom will die in a concrete box. Emily will live. That's justice. That's revenge.